Hello, once again, Kenny Jacobs from Bloomington, Illinois. Going to do another video today talking about current events as it relates to Bible prophecy. And you know, this channel is about Bible prophecy, about the gospel of Jesus Christ, and it is not going to be, never has been, and never will be politically correct. I believe that political correctness is kind of laying the foundation for the soon coming one world government and one world religion. And so I am going to stand up for the truth of Jesus Christ and the gospel. And that's just the way it's going to be. And so with that, let's get into this first news story. This is out of, I saw this interview on CNN today. Franklin Graham was interviewed on CNN. The headline here: Graham doesn't think Islam is compatible with American values. Pastor Franklin Graham, son of famous Billy Graham, told CNN's Carol Costello that he didn't think Islam was compatible with American values during a discussion of Republican presidential candidate Donald Trump's proposed Muslim immigration ban. Is Islam compatible with American values? Costello asked blatantly. I don't think so, Graham responded. Despite his answer here, the president and CEO of the Billy Graham Evangelistic Association explained earlier that he wanted people of all faiths to join him on his upcoming 50-state prayer tour leading up to the November election. I don't really have much hope for the Democratic Party, the Republican Party, the Tea Party, or anybody else. Our system is broken, said Graham. The only principles that really work are God's principles. I'm asking for Christians or anybody to join me at the Capitol and to pray for our nation. Costello pushed Graham for details, asking if practicing Jews and Muslims were also allowed to join in prayer at his event. Anybody, everybody is welcome. Absolutely, Muslims will be welcome, he explained. People that would be willing to come and to pray for our nation and to pray for its leaders. All right, well, if you think that God is going to honor prayer and prayer meetings to false gods with other religions, you're sadly deceived. And that may be politically incorrect and an unpopular thing to say, but we're living in the last days, and the gospel, the true gospel, the fact that Jesus Christ is the way, the truth, and the life, the only way, is a very unpopular message these days. And for Franklin Graham to say that we're going to have a prayer meeting with all sorts of faiths, anybody can come. Again, we are seeing the foundation of the one world religion, the indoctrination of the people. But I do have to say, as I watched this interview, he originally said Christians. I'm asking for Christians to gather, and she kind of interrupted him and said Christians, and then he kind of, I think he almost fell backed into a corner. I wish he would have, if that was the case, stood up and said yes, Christians, but no. Then he said no, anybody can come, Muslims, anybody can come. And at some point during this conversation, Carol Costello says, so should I trust in my Catholicism? And he didn't really get a chance to answer that. I'm not sure he really would have answered that. But I'm going to answer that. No, you should not be trusting in your Catholicism, just like a Baptist or a Pentecostal should not be trusting in their denomination either. Put your faith in Jesus Christ alone. And Carol Costello is, her belief system is, and I come from experience here. I was raised Catholic, went to 12 years of Catholic school. Most of my family and relatives and friends are Catholic. My mother was a devout Catholic her entire life. And Catholics, they trust in their Catholicism. They believe that being a member of the Catholic Church, being subject to the Pope, taking part in the church sacraments, being a good Catholic will ultimately either earn them a trip to purgatory to finish paying for their sins later on, or a trip to heaven. But that is not biblical. Your Catholicism does not save you. Are there saved Catholics? Absolutely, but they're saved in spite of their Catholicism, not because of it. And that's true for anybody else for that matter. You're not saved by your religious denomination. You're saved by your faith alone in Jesus Christ and his finished work on the cross. But here we have now, we got Rick Warren out there heavily involved in Chrislam and the one world religion. We got Pope Francis heavily involved in it. And now we got Franklin Graham saying, yes, let's have prayer all across the nation, including with Muslims and interfaith. And it is not going to help. It is not going to bring on peace. It's just going to further bring on God's wrath and judgment. Let's move on. Pope Francis urges countries to review laws on refugees and migrants. Very interesting. Are you starting to realize that Pope Francis is kind of the leader of the world right now? Pope Francis is exerting his influence in all areas of life all around the world. Since when does Pope Francis have the power to ask countries to review their laws? The fact of the matter is he doesn't have that power, but it sure seems that the world is allowing them to take that power. Let's look at this article here a little bit. So again, headline, Pope Francis urges countries to review laws on refugees and migrants. Laws on migration should reflect a readiness to welcome migrants and to facilitate their integration, according to the Argentine pontiff. He was speaking as thousands seek entry to the EU, many via Italy. In a call for compassion for the poor and vulnerable on Tuesday, he urged countries to review immigration laws and to integrate migrants in an appeal that strikes at the heart of debates in Europe and the United States over the issue. With regard to migrants, I would ask that legislation on migration be reviewed, so while respecting reciprocal rights and responsibilities, it can reflect a readiness to welcome migrants and to facilitate their integration, he said, the occasion of the Roman Catholic Church's World Day of Peace. Special concern should be paid to the conditions for legal residency, since having to live clandestinely can lead to criminal behavior, said the Pope. The annual message is sent to world leaders, international organizations, and the United States. The pontiff's message comes as some EU members have responded to the biggest refugee crisis to hit the continent since World War II. Wow. Again, here you go. Pope Francis sending out a message to world leaders, international organizations, and the United Nations, telling them to review their laws regarding migrants. Let's go to Daniel chapter 7, verse 8. And I considered the horns, and behold, there came up among them another little horn, before whom there were three of the first horns plucked up by the roots, and behold, in this horn were eyes like the eyes of a man, and a mouth speaking great things. Verse 20. And of the 10 horns that were in his head, and of the others which came up, and before them 3 fell, even of that horn that had eyes, and a mouth that spake great things, whose look was more stout than his fellows, I beheld, and the same horn made war with the saints, and prevailed against them. Pope Francis is preparing to have a war on all fundamentalism, including Christian fundamentalists. Let's go down to verse 24. And the 10 kings out of this kingdom, and the 10 horns out of this kingdom are 10 kings that shall arise. And another shall arise after them, and he shall be diverse from the first, and he shall subdue 3 kings. And he shall speak great words against the Most High, and shall wear out the saints of the Most High, and think to change times and laws. And they shall be given into his hand until a times, and the dividing time. 3.5 years. This is the same 3.5 years that the book of Revelation talks about. It's also the final 3.5 year period of time known as that people tend to refer to as the Great Tribulation, which Jesus Christ referred to in Matthew chapter 24, verse 15, when he spoke of the abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel the prophet. And it says right here that he shall think to change times and laws, as Pope Francis is now encouraging world leaders to review their laws regarding migrants. Let's go to Daniel chapter 8, verse 24 and 25. And his power shall be mighty, but not by his own power, and he shall destroy wonderfully, and shall prosper and practice, and shall destroy the mighty and the holy people. And through his policy also he shall cause craft to prosper in his hand, and he shall magnify himself in his heart, and by peace shall destroy many. And he shall also stand up against the prince of princes, but he shall be broken without hand. Pope Francis is taking the lead around the world of trying to bring in peace. By peace he shall destroy many. Wear out the saints. He shall destroy the mighty and the holy people. Keep in mind that the Vatican recently signed a treaty with the Palestinians. Pope Francis called Mahmoud Abbas an angel of peace. And he is, again, waging war against even Christian fundamentalism. Let's go to Daniel chapter 11, verse 36 to 39. And the king shall do according to his will, and shall exalt himself, and magnify himself above every god, and shall speak marvelous things against the God of gods, and shall prosper till the indignation be accomplished. For that is determined shall be done. Neither shall he regard the God of his fathers, nor the desire of women, nor regard any god, for he shall magnify himself above all. But in his estate shall he honor the God of forces, and the God whom his fathers knew not shall he honor with gold and silver, and with precious stones and pleasant things. Thus shall he do in the most strongholds with a strange God, whom he shall acknowledge and increase with glory. And he shall cause them to rule over many, and shall divide the land for gain. Pope Francis, right now, is heavily involved with the United Nations climate change agreement that will redistribute wealth around the world to help supposedly eliminate poverty and to take care of the poor and the needy. And he's wanting to redistribute the wealth of the world. And he shall, in his estate, shall honor the God of forces, as Pope Francis continues to talk about things like Mother Earth and the environment. The God of forces, a strange God. Neither shall he regard the God of his fathers. Pope Francis represents Catholicism. A long history of supposedly being the one true Church of Jesus Christ, the representative of God himself on earth, but now he's making the claim that all of us worship the same God, and that God does not have a magic wand. He cannot do everything. He is speaking against the God of gods. He's not standing up for the truth that Jesus Christ is the only way. And of course it also says that he shall not have the desire of women, and keep in mind that Pope Francis is celibate. So he's looking more and more like a possibility, isn't he? Let's move on. This one is amazing. Wheaten College professor. I mean, I live in Illinois. Wheaton. This is a college up in Wheaton, Illinois. Christian College, Wheaton, Illinois. On a personal note, I actually give golf lessons to a girl that plays in the college golf team up there. Wheaton College professor comes out wearing hijab, quotes Pope Francis, "We all worship the same God." How do you like that? Great influence. Thank you, Pope Francis. If I had a student enrolled in Wheaton College right now, I'd be strongly considering removing them. Wheaton College professor comes out wearing hijab, quotes Pope Francis, "We all worship the same God." A professor at a prominent Christian university in Illinois posted photos of herself wearing an Islamic hijab this past week, stating that she was doing so to show solidarity with Muslims. Larshia Hawkins is an associate political science director at Wheaton College, one of the most renowned Christian schools in the world. On Thursday, she posted 2 photos of herself wearing a hijab and stated in a lengthy explanation that she plans to wear it everywhere she goes during the Advent, including at the Christian college and the church. I stand in human solidarity with my Muslim neighbor because we are formed of the same primordial clay, descendants of the same cradle of humankind. Let's see here. She said that not only does she have a common ancestry with Muslims, but that Christians and Muslims worship the same God. I stand in religious solidarity with Muslims because they, like me, a Christian, are people of the book, Hawkins asserted, and as Pope Francis stated last week, we worship the same God. But as I tell my students, theoretical solidarity is not solidarity at all. Thus, beginning tonight, my solidarity has become embodied solidarity, she continued. Hawkins said that wearing the hijab is part of her Christmas worship and that she is seeking to combat what she perceives to be Islamophobia in society. As part of my Advent worship, I will wear the hijab to work at Wheaten College, to play in Chi-Town, in the airport, and on the airplane to my home state that initiated one of the first anti-Sharia laws. In parentheses, it says unconstitutional and Islamophobic, and at church, she wrote. The professor said that her wish for the season would be to see a large-scale movement of women wearing hijabs in solidarity with Muslims, noting that she even obtained approval from the Council on American Islamic Relations. Friends and followers of Hawkins' Facebook page praised the professor with some photos posting on themselves wearing a hijab to show that they had joined her movement. I, too, am a devout Christian that embraces my Muslim brothers and sisters as people of the book that worship the same God, wrote Cynthia Pearson. Embodied solidarity, I love it. You are amazing, Arcia. Thank you for walking this path before us and inviting us to follow. You are a picture of the faith I know and trust. Wow. Thankfully, whoever wrote this article is against it. Let's go to the end. Wheaton College needs to sit down and have a talk with this lady and tell her that the God of Islam was a pagan god, a moon god, and is not the same God, Jehovah, that we worship, and that Islam is not that peaceful religion that she believes it is. Well, run commentator. If she is this naive as a teacher, God help her. She is trying to serve two masters, as Scripture says. We cannot serve two masters because we will love one and hate the other. God is a jealous God and will not share his glory with demons and pagans. I am sad that she is wrongly influencing young people seeking to serve Christ. Amen to that. And that's what I was saying at the beginning of this message with Franklin Graham and his prayer meetings around the country with Muslims and anybody else who wants to join. God is a jealous God, and he will not honor prayer to false gods. And people are believing the lie that we all worship the same God. It's just going to get worse as the one ruled religion grows stronger and stronger and becomes the law of the land. Wow. Let's move on. Pope's rebuff to conservative cardinal stirs Vatican intrigue. I just want to read a little bit of this article and go a little bit of scriptural reference here. Again, Pope's rebuff to conservative cardinal stirs Vatican intrigue. A lot of intrigue and scandal going on at the Vatican all the time, it seems. Francis's cancellation of a trip to meet Angelo Scola is seen as the latest snub for the Archbishop of Milan, and church observers are questioning its meaning. Pope Francis has always said Christians should seek out encounters, meetings that expand one's understanding of the other and increase the capacity for love. But there is one encounter the Pope has steadfastly avoided since his election in 2013. Angelo Scola of Milan, the powerful and conservative Italian cardinal many thought would be Pope before the surprise choice of the Argentinian Jesuit known as Father Bergoglio, received word of the latest apparent snub last week. A bulletin released by the Vatican press office announced that the Archbishop of Milan had regrettably been informed by Pope Francis, his number two, the Secretary of State, Pietro Parolin, that Francis's planned trip to Milan in May was off because the Pope had too many commitments in Rome. Last year, Francis fell ill shortly before two planned meetings with Scola. And Scola, again, is a conservative cardinal who is against some of the things that Pope Francis is doing within the church. Now let's go down to the end of this article, because it's kind of interesting here at the end. It says the Pope is kind of distancing himself from any kind of scenario that looks like he is giving his blessing to a Scola papacy, because now people are starting to think about what might come next. Austin Everett, who wrote The Great Reformer, a biography of Francis, said the move could simply be a reflection that the Pope, who once said he envisioned a possible 5-year papacy for himself, is now imagining himself in a role of the Bishop of Rome for at least 2 more years. Well, see here, get this. It says, I am hearing that he says he needs 7 years to complete his 5-year plan. I think that the timetable has been relaxed, so it makes sense to have a big trip, and Milan will be a big trip later. Interesting. Again, Francis is creating a lot of strife within the church. The more conservative cardinals are against some of the changes and some of the things that Pope Francis is trying to do. Pope Francis claims to be so inclusive and tolerant, yet he doesn't want to talk to this guy. But what really caught my eye about this article is at the bottom here, where it says Pope Francis says he needs 7 years to complete his 5-year plan. Very, very interesting, because Daniel's 70th week is 7 years. And in the midst of the week, 3.5 years, the Antichrist will enter the temple, declare himself to be God, and then he will rule for 42 months, 3.5 years, as Daniel called it, a times and a dividing of time. Isn't that interesting? Pope Francis had a plan. He felt he needed 7 years to complete a 5-year plan. And his final 7 years is the time of Jacob's trouble, Daniel's 70th week under the reign of the Antichrist, the one-world government, and the final 3.5 years after Satan enters the Antichrist. And then people like to call that part the Great Tribulation. Very, very interesting how all this stuff just kind of all ties together. Here's the headline. Pope refuses to wear bulletproof vest for Christmas amid ISIS threats. Pope refusing to wear a bulletproof vest during the Christmas. Interesting. Could there be a possible false flag attack coming up with some lying signs and wonder in the future? Is it going to happen over Christmas? I don't know. I don't know when it's going to happen, and I don't know if for sure it's going to be the Pope it's going to happen to. But it's amazing how they keep talking about security around the Pope, him having threats from ISIS, him being afraid that he's going to be killed. And I even did an article one time. He said he hopes it doesn't hurt. It just seems like we're getting set up for it. So let's go to Revelation again, Revelation chapter 13, verse 3. And I saw one of his heads, as it were, wounded to death, and his deadly wound was healed. And all the world wondered after the beast. Verse 5, and there was given unto him a mouth, speaking great things and blasphemies, and power was given unto him to continue 42 months. Again, 3.5 years. I read about in Daniel about him being given a mouth, speaking great things and blasphemies, and continuing for 3.5 years. And here it is again in Revelation. Let's go to Revelation chapter 13, verse 11 to 14. And I beheld another beast coming up out of the earth, and he had 2 horns like a lamb, and he spake as a dragon. And he exercises all the power of the first beast before him, and causes the earth and them which dwell therein to worship the first beast, whose deadly wound was healed. And he doeth great wonders, so that he maketh fire come down from heaven on the earth in the sight of men. And he deceiveth them that dwell on the earth by the means of those miracles which he had power to do in the sight of the beast, saying to them that dwell on the earth, that they should make an image to the beast which had the wound by a sword and did live. It's just odd how many times they're talking about Francis and possible attacks and things like he's not going to be wearing bulletproof vest. It just be on the lookout. Possible false flag event. 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, by the way. Verse 3 and 4. Let no man deceive you by any means, for that day shall not come, except there come a falling away first, and the man of sin be revealed, the son of perdition, who opposes and exalts himself above all that is called God, or that is worshipped, so that he as God sitteth in the temple of God, showing himself that he is God. And again, we can see that reference in Thessalonians, we can see it in Revelation, we can see it 2 Thessalonians, and there will be a temple where he will declare himself to be God. Wow. Interesting times we live in. Here's a headline. Signs of the times. Survey. Same-sex marriage and Pope Francis are the religious stories of the year. Another interesting headline from today. United Nations to sign climate deal on April 22nd. Remember, this had the Paris Climate Change Conference. Pope Francis has been heavily involved in that with his encyclical. He's now calling for all the world leaders to act on this climate change thing, to act on it, to put it in practice, to make the changes, change the laws, all sorts of things that Francis is trying to do along those lines of this climate change agreement. It says world leaders from nearly 200 countries are invited to the UN on April 22nd, which is Earth Day, to sign the climate deal. Again, keep in mind, Pope Francis is very much promoting that. He's the one that the world has given the moral authority to do so. And let's go to Daniel chapter 9, verse 27. And he shall confirm the covenant with many for 1 week. In the midst of the week, again 3.5 years in, he shall cause the sacrifice and oblation to cease. Is that the covenant? I don't know. It could be. I'm not saying it is. I'm not saying it's not. I'm saying that the world is looking for peace. The world is becoming more of a global government every day. And Pope Francis is taking the lead role in that government. And at some point, the Antichrist will confirm a covenant. And I just wonder how much longer that's going to be. Let's move on. Report. Significant RFID technology adoption surge in the retail industry. RFID, I look into it every day, what's going on with it around the world in the news. And it's just becoming more and more used in all aspects of life around the planet. And as this article says, there's a huge surge in the adoption of RFID technology in the retail industry. I just want to go down here, though, to the last paragraph of this article. It says, recently, retailers like Macy's, Walmart, Saks, and others have implemented RFID on billions of items. As a result, they are realizing a sizable operational, financial, and customer satisfaction advantage over competing retailers who are not using RFID. If you are one of those competing retailers, you should probably be taking a serious look at implementing RFID now. RFID is tracking inventory. They put the RFID labels on the tags, and it uses scanners and barcodes. Well, again, let's just go back to Revelation chapter 13, because in the retail industry, at some point, everybody will have to buy or sell with a microchip type implant or some sort of technology like that, like this RFID type technology that people are already getting implanted. And at some point, all of the retail will have to have it, or they won't be able to sell it. Revelation chapter 13, verse 16 and 17, and he causes all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and bond, to receive a mark in the right hand or in their foreheads, and that no man might buy or sell save he that had the mark or the name of the beast or the number of his name. And you know, on a quick note, there's a lot of people now saying you can accept the mark of the beast and still be saved, and do not believe that lie. If you miss the rapture of the church, if people disappear, all the people that were telling you that Jesus is the only way, and all the people you were making fun of because they were, you know, Jesus freaks and telling you needed to get saved, when all those people disappear, if you're left behind, do not take the mark. Revelation chapter 14, verse 9, and the third angel followed them, saying with a loud voice, if any man worship the beast and his image, and receive his mark in his forehead or in his right hand, the same shall drink of the wine of the wrath of God, which is poured out without mixture into the cup of his indignation, and he shall be tormented with fire and brimstone in the presence of the holy lambs, and in the presence of the holy angels, and in the presence of the Lamb. And the smoke of their torment ascendeth up forever and ever, and they have no rest day nor night who worship the beast and his image, and whosoever receiveth the mark of his name. But the world is preparing that technology. It will be implemented at some point worldwide. Interesting article. I found this in Rapture Ready News today. John Kerry, I do not know the end game for Israel, but neither do the Israelis. It's a very interesting article. I would like to encourage John Kerry and Barack Hussein Obama to open up the Word of God, open up their hearts to Jesus, because the Bible tells you what the end game is for Israel. If you read it. Kerry, I don't know the end game from Israel, neither do the Israelis. Expressing renewed exasperation over the United States' inability to forge a two-state solution between Israelis and Palestinians, Secretary of State John Kerry says he has no idea how the more than 60-year-old conflict will come to an end. But what's potentially worse, he says, is that the Israelis don't know either, even though they have the most incentive to find a solution. What is it going to be like is the question. Will it be a democracy? Will it be a Jewish state? Or will it be a unitary state with two systems?